Hi everyone, I'm Davina Borrow-Jones, the founder at the Mumpreneur Lawyer. So I'm going to be taking you through a webinar today just in relation to how we can best prepare our businesses over the next coming months during the economic effects of the coronavirus. So I'm just about to share my screen. Okay. Okay, I think you can all see that. Can I just get an okay if you can see the first slide? Just a thumbs up. All right. So, firstly, why do we even exist? I'm going to let you know why the Mumpreneur Lawyer even exists. And of course, today's topic is the 19 steps to business survival during COVID-19. So they're easy steps that you can take right now to ensure you don't just survive through the next 6 months, but also thrive, perhaps not right away, but certainly into the future. So why? I became interested in law in the 90s when Ally McBeal was on TV, and it was really glamorous to be a lawyer back then. You can see that photo straight from the 90s. And when I went to law school, topics like e-commerce and outsourcing, they were just emerging. And I loved it. I love being at the cutting edge. I got an opportunity to work in intellectual property and outsourcing at a US law firm. And yeah, felt very Ally McBeal at the time. But then, like many women and men, by the time I was in my 30s, I burnt out. Been in corporate for a long time, working long hours, became quite depressed and was very frustrated with dealing with big organisations who didn't seem to care about their clients. And when I found myself at around 11 one night on my birthday, feeling pretty much as lonely as this little boy, I knew that things just had to change. So I got out of corporate, but I didn't really know where I was going. And after a few years, I started working for a small law firm where I could meet clients in person and really help them in person. And well, then I got pregnant, and like when you're in the market for a red car, all you see is red cars, I suddenly noticed all the pregnant women and all the mums. And I really noticed the difficulty they were having. They would often see me when things went wrong rather than being proactive about their legals. So they'd leave it too late. And when you're not proactive, you can end up in court, stressed, spending way too much money. You can lose your reputation, lose your business. Mums had to bring kids into appointments, and legal issues are hard at the best of times, let alone dealing with screaming kids. So we know that a failure to plan is often a signifier of failed businesses. So really part of your planning should be risk assessment, and the best way to minimise your legal risk is to get your legals in place. So we focus on being proactive. And when I had my baby, funnily enough, again on the date of my birthday, I realised there had to be a much smarter way for me to work and help other mums in business. So I wanted to help mums take a proactive approach to their legals, because then they really spend far less money and have peace of mind. It's much better than waiting for things to go wrong. I wanted to make it simple for mums and do away with all the legal jargon, offer fixed costs and flexible appointments. So I think the cost that you save by not hiring a lawyer initially really get dwarfed by the costs that you often spend down the track if you get it wrong. So emphasising that proactive approach, right now it's more important than ever to be proactive. Some courts are actually closed temporarily, or they're being very restricted in their ability to deal with disputes. So strong business relationships are more important now than ever. So if you're not already, you need to get talking. There are many legal issues that arise from coronavirus. Biggest one, how do we maintain a healthy work and safe workplace? And who determines what's safe? I mean, everyone's in the same predicament. So, and there's also new laws being passed now faster than ever. So I've got 10 checks here that you can run through quite easily to check where you're at with your business and what you can do. So you need to ask what your legal obligations are under contracts with your suppliers. So do you have to make minimum orders, and can you keep complying with those obligations? If you can, for how long? So if you need to change things, you need to get contacting your suppliers now and start communicating with them. Ideally, get a lawyer to draft any variations to contracts, at least get everything in writing. And what about their obligations to you? Can they continue to supply to you? Is that supply chain going to be interrupted at some point, or has it already? And are there other sources of supply that you can get? So if you're communicating with them, you can really get to know how they're going to be affected, if not now, in the future. And again, get any changes that you need to contracts in writing. So most businesses have already pivoted, and some have amazing stories, like the fashion brands now manufacturing gowns and masks, car manufacturers manufacturing ventilators. So we know what the problem is now. So work out ways you can be part of the solution. So you've got to ask what your legal obligations are under your contracts with your customers and clients. And can you deliver your products and services as they are? If so, for how long? If not, then you need to change. So already we've seen a lot of change to online, and possibly back offline soon. There's a bit of uncertainty, but make sure your clients and customers know every point of the way how you're delivering to them. Talk to them. If you're still open, make sure they're aware you're open. Sometimes people haven't made that clear, so really let them know that you're still serving them. So obviously now's the time to get creative. Then you need to know what your obligations are in relation to cancellations and refunds. So the ACCC are constantly updating their information for small businesses and consumers. You need to be really kind, but you also need to be wary, because if you start giving refunds when you don't need to, you may not help the survival of your business. So you also need to be aware that if something is cancelled because of government restrictions, this does impact consumer rights. So then you also want to ask if you've got adequate limitations of liability in your client contracts. That's very important all the time. You just don't want to be found responsible and open to a lot of risk there. So the next question we can ask is, do your contracts adequately deal with the situation, the virus? And so can you suspend or terminate them if necessary? So many of them won't, but some will. So they'll have what's called a force majeure clause. If you can, get a lawyer to review contracts and vary them And certainly any new contract that you enter into should be written with consideration of the changed world we find ourselves in. In some circumstances, a legal doctrine called the doctrine of frustration may be applicable, but we strongly suggest you get legal advice to check it out. Unfortunately, the importance of collecting and disclosing personal information properly is often overlooked at times like these. If you're in the health industry and collecting information on people's health, you really still need to comply with the Australian privacy principles. So there's some great information on the Information Commissioner's page if you need some, and you should have a privacy policy in place. So other things you want to check, which if you haven't already, you need to make sure you do. If you have any independent contractors or outsourcing, make sure they know about, when you need them, and, check their availability. Then, of course, you need to stay updated with all the eligible or the government support that you may be eligible for. So whether that's federal, state or local council, you need to be aware. You should have applied for JobKeeper. If not, get onto it and talk to your accountant about whether you can apply. There's also other offers to keep up to date with, so Facebook advertising grants and things like that. I know that Facebook have allowed and enabled many grants in the US, but I don't think they've come to Australia just yet. So a few things to think about. So those last 10 questions, they apply to all small businesses. These other 9 actually apply to people that may have loans. If you have a commercial lease, if you have employees, even just one, or if you're in the health industry. So certainly tune in and keep tuning in if you have any of those. So there have been some relieving announcements recently. So the banks will defer loan repayments for 98% of businesses affected by coronavirus for 6 months. Nonetheless, you still need to assess if you can keep making your repayments, and if not, discuss it with your bank or your financier. And if you agree on any changes, make sure they're in writing. Make sure you understand what your obligations are, not just over the next 6 months, but what happens after that. What happens to principal, what happens to interest. And very importantly, we've now got a moratorium on evictions for commercial leases, which basically means that small and medium business tenants can't be evicted from their premises for a period of 6 months. The mandatory code has recently been written into regulations, and they include a provision that prohibits landlords from terminating leases or padlocking stores for the non-payment of rent. So what do those new regulations say? They say that you're an impacted lessee if you qualify for the JobKeeper and your turnover is less than 50 mil. So I imagine that would be most of us. So the lessor can't take any action from the 24th of April for 6 months. That takes us to the 24th of October. And that's in relation to failure to pay rent, outgoings, or any action in relation to your business not being open during the required opening hours. They cannot increase your rent, and after those 6 months, they cannot take action on the grounds that the rent should have been increased. And where outgoings are reduced for them, like land tax, statutory charges, rates, insurance, they have to pass on that reduction. So as the tenant, you can request that the landlord renegotiate rent, and they must negotiate in good faith and consider the economic impacts of the pandemic. They need to offer rent reduction in the form of a waiver or deferral of rent, which is proportionate to your reduction in turnover. And the deferrals will be amortised over the balance of the lease term, or 24 months after whatever's the greater. So the landlords should also waive recovery of any expenses by the tenant during the period that you cannot trade, and no repayments of your rent should commence until the pandemic actually ends, which is a calling by the government. The government decides when the pandemic ends. Or the repayments could commence after the lease expires and a reasonable recovery period after then. So they cannot charge any interest or anything with respect to the rent waived, and no fees, charges or punitive interest may be charged on deferrals. The tenant then gets the option to extend the lease for the period of the rent waiver or the deferral period. So keep in mind all those, like, this is a really good news for tenants of commercial leases, but you must be eligible for JobKeeper to be able to apply. And everyone else is expected to pay their rent as normal and won't be able to negotiate with landlords under the terms described. So perhaps another elephant in the room is, are you protecting your workers from coronavirus? You do have an obligation to keep a healthy workplace during this time, and you need to ensure you can do so. So that still involves encouraging people to follow guidelines from the World Health Organization. We've all seen it: cleaning hands, covering mouth, nose, avoiding close contact with anyone with fever, cough. You also need to ensure your employees notify you of potential contraction and seek their medical attention urgently. You can require them to provide medical certificates and clearances, and you probably want to do a regular risk assessment of your operations, just to make sure everything is safe, particularly if there are second wave outbreaks here and there. So there's some great information on the Safe Work New South Wales website, and you should definitely check that out. If the government does order your business to fully shut down and your employees can't be usefully employed, you may be able to stand them down without pay, but this area of law is really complex and you should definitely seek legal advice. The lawyer will look at the modern award, the enterprise agreement, the contract of employment, and they'll actually try to establish if coronavirus is the real reason for the stoppage. They'll consider, if there's other opportunities for the employee to be useful or not. And if there's a slowdown, you want to shut, you'll need to keep paying your employees, but you can discuss if they use their leave. So paying your employees is your obligation, but there have been some innovative measures in place that I've seen where, one CEO of a company discussed what he should do with each individual employee, and they actually came to a solution altogether. So that's a bit of a rundown on what us small businesses need to be aware of. And that's a bit of a checklist. Of course, it's not comprehensive. There are other things. There have been other changes. There have been changes to insolvency and bankruptcy laws as well, giving us a bit more leeway, a bit more time to pay bills and a bit of protection there. There have been changes to signing laws, such as signing of wills, many other changes, but that gives you some idea. So what you should look for if you're looking for a lawyer are these things. Ask if they offer fixed costs. Ask if they will give you personalised, customised service, and make sure you understand what they're saying. So make sure they make it simple enough for you to understand, and that their language isn't too littered with jargon. And if it is, ask them to explain. So that's me. My name's Davina Borra-Jones, founder of The Mumpreneur Lawyer, and you can connect with us in many different ways, whatever you like: Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, getting more active on LinkedIn. So that's all good fun, and there's often legal tips there. We've got a blog and of course website with many different products and packages on there too, particularly for startups. So if you are a startup, feel free to check out our website at www.mumlawyer.com.au, and you can contact me directly there. So that's it for today. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. If there's no questions, I will wrap up for today. And for everyone who watches the webinar, you can book in for a free 20-minute legal consult. And you can do that via our website directly. Just go to the website and go to the booking page, free 20-minute consultation. Looking forward to chatting with you some more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, are you okay for a quick chat?
Absolutely.
How are you?
Very well. I'm just going to